Starts off, Carter.
All right, welcome to Beyblade of the Beltway, your favorite Washington politics podcast where you get all of the spin. Carter here.
I'm Kevin for this. Not a bit.
Yeah, it turns out that Kevin McCarthy didn't have the heart of the cards as he was unprecedentedly removed from power. Except that's a Yu-Gi-Oh reference. I actually don't know that much Beyblade lore, which is another way of saying, welcome back to Carter and Kevin Explain Football. I'm actually Carter.
I'm still Kevin. Hasn't changed.
Fantastic. Week 4 is in the books, ladies and gentlemen. We are officially a quarter through the year. I refuse to acknowledge the 18th week. Um, and I think now, as we begin to discuss teams more and more, I think we're getting just a slightly better sense of where the season is actually going. Once
Yeah.
it's easier to not make as many hot take statements and actually really break down where these teams are going into the core chunk of the season.
Yeah. Now that it's like no more September games because it's October, and I feel like now we're into the grind part of the season. Like between the first games in October, probably till around Thanksgiving. These aren't really I'm not saying they're not major games, but these are the games that it's just you're gonna try and just collect some wins.
Mhm.
I feel like most most divisions have a clear established shtick. Uh, whether who's doing good, who's not doing so good, with the exception of the AFC South, which we will talk about later, because they're all 2-2. Um, but it's everyone's going to be jockeying for a better position now, and then once we get to Thanksgiving and December, that's when people are that's when they're going to be showing off their playoff stuff.
Right, right. If you're if you're a team on the fringes, this is where it's like kitchen sink time, throwing everything at the wall. Um, if you're a team who might be facing some change and overhaul going into next season, this is the okay, now I actually need to save my job territory.
Yeah.
And by the end of the month, I like to think by the end of October, we at least have a good sense of 4 out of the 7 playoff teams in both divisions. We have a pretty confident, not necessarily the division winners,
No.
but we'll lock in at least 3 or 4 teams that will feel like it would be very hard for them to get bumped from the playoffs now.
Yeah. Based off of things with schedule and stuff, that would be a fun video at the end of this month. Just we'll make a little own secondary video and we'll just talk who we think is locked at the moment and who's lucky to make wild card and who we know isn't going to stand a chance and why are they the Carolina Panthers. Um, but
Ewings.
yeah, no, it's this is a really I don't want to say prove yourself part, but it's the not let yourself down. Like
I like that.
this is the time of year where you're not. I don't want to say you're fighting to save your job. That's more of a December kind of thing. But this is you're fighting to not lose your job, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more rookies are getting a lot more reps in. People are getting injured, so other people have time to show off. It's all about maintaining your spot on the card.
Mm-hmm. Shall we dive in?
We shall.
All right. So your first high you listed was the Jacksonville Jaguars getting a
Yes.
win in their first of 2 back-to-back London games.
Yes. It was a very good win of 23-7 too. And
Mm.
this is something we're going to talk about how that game was broadcasted later this episode.
Right.
But Atlanta Atlanta Falcons went in 2-1. Jacksonville went in 1-2. So, or did I say Atlantiville? Um, Atlanta Falcons were 2-1. So it was a nice kind of prove yourself moment of two teams that have been having all right season so far. Like
Mhm.
minus Jacksonville's game against the uh, what's it called, the Texans. That was its own level of disaster. But like they held the Chiefs pretty well. They beat the Colts, and it's like a nice little get back on the wagon for them.
Right. I was torn about this because a part of me just thought, like, I don't know, watching the game, I was like, I mean, they look better. I think this is an example of like sky high hype kind of like clouding that this is still a young team and
Yeah,
like a win is a win. Because I'm like, I feel like you should be crushing these guys right now. Like, I feel like we're just like going in paces. But at the same time, considering how volatile this season has been already for them, maybe they should just take the win as is.
yeah,
If nothing else, the defense looking confident and being able to hold the fort against a wide variety of Atlanta curveballs
yeah.
was a step in the right direction.
No, it was a nice it was a nice display for them. Of we screwed up the last couple of weeks. Well, screwed up bad last week. The previous week we lost to the Chiefs. Let's
Mm,
let's get down back into it and really just take take our shots.
mhm. Second on our docket, the team that's kind of become our Carter and Kevin Explains football darling, the
Yes.
Houston Texans. I'm going to be honest, this game I was fully expecting them to lose and lose badly. It felt like they had just gotten a really nice win against a division rival. You know,
Yeah.
Mike was going to be locked in. It's going to be a classic, like the rookie quarterback takes a step back game and cools down. But no, they went at them.
No,
306 yards and 2 touchdowns for our boy CJ.
not bad at all. Some would say that's good. Uh, great commentary, Kevin. Keep it up. No, I think if I recall correctly, when we were talking about like like preseason, we were talking all the teams, who they're, what's going on and stuff. We were projecting the Steelers to be one, or I think at least I was projecting to be one of the, like the Steelers would be one of our sleeper teams of like definitely gonna make playoff. Like they might barely make the wild card of the playoffs. They're not. They're probably not gonna win the division. But so much has happened this season, and they just kind of, for lack of a better word, they blew it.
Yeah, this was a very sobering game on my front for Pittsburgh because at the bare minimum, I thought their defense would be able to drag them through the muck and get them to a wild card. But and the Houston Texans are on like their injuries on the offensive line have gotten so bad they're on to like third starters at
Yeah,
positions. I don't think they have a single starter that's the original starter going into the regular season, and yet CJ is barely getting touched. He still hasn't thrown an interception.
no,
Like,
I think
and that is a
he is
red
the,
flag if the defense is given up for Pittsburgh.
yeah, he is. I think the high. What was the stat? Either the highest yards or the most completions thrown in the first 4 games of a season without throwing an interception.
Truly amazing. And again,
Yeah.
and this will be something we talk about as we get later into the month. I kind of hot takingly said I think Houston could make the playoffs this year. There's a very real chance, like at some point, sheer talent just wins out and they like fall back a little bit. But like I'm looking over the standings going into the second month of the season,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, out of these teams, how many like just in front of them and just behind them do I expect to stay there? Like, the answer is not a lot. Like,
Not, it's very interesting with
mhm.
them because I feel like we both can agree that both AFC and NFC South were the dog shit divisions last year, correct?
But it's just destiny. It's always
Yeah.
never. If you bet on South in either conference, like bet actual money, like you might have a gambling problem.
Yeah. And it's I think they get I think weeks 1 and 2 for them were like they didn't do crazy bad. They like week 1 was their roughest game for them so far. But if you look at it, it's they lost to in a blowout, and then they lost in a pretty close game, and then they won in a not super close game, but it was still like it was like a higher scoring game, and then now they won in pretty much a blowout. They completely shifted how their season has been going, and I feel like that's something that, like how I said, week three is really the week to see how everyone's actually doing, like playing on full cylinders, because there's
Oh
a
yeah.
decent amount of tape on their opponents, and there is like you have time to work together in more intense situations, and I feel like this is a really good sign for them. And I know we might have mocked Tom and Callum at the when we had them rank the characters at the beginning of this, or rank the teams at the beginning of the season. Yeah, I almost said the characters,
I
but
mean, they treated them like characters.
they
Let's be
did.
fair.
But it's such they did good, and like well, at least with the Texans, it's like kind of a surprise right now, and they're I think you just said they were Caspod's little darlings, um, which honestly they kind of are.
Screw it. I want them to go to the Super Bowl now. It would be very funny.
I want them to make a solid run, but I sent this to you like half an hour ago tops,
Mhm.
where I saw a thing that apparently C.J. Stroud has host his teammates over for dinner almost every single night, and that is a great leadership quality. This kid's 20, 21, give or take, 22
Right.
max, and he is taking like a hold of this borderline cursed franchise. They haven't done
I
a
think it's safe to say.
yeah,
And like, it is truly astonishing how he and D'Amico Ryans have just done this incredible full-on like purge of the culture for the better. Because again, it wasn't just that they were cursed; it was like the vibes were horrific.
yeah,
Um, Bill O'Brien wasted all of their draft capital and crashed the team into a ditch. They had some weird Rasputin X figure who was whispering in the ear
yeah,
of the GM. Their owner was one of the most egregious racists to come out of that entire Kaepernick saga. Like everything, like the vibes were truly putrid. Truly, wait, did we really need a 30-second team? And to turn that around so quickly is admirable. Like, if nothing else, that's a huge win in his favor.
yeah. But and I think the best thing that we got out of them for like the last 2 to 3 seasons is us coming up with the bit of Lovey Smith energy.
Yes.
That's the best thing I can think from them for like the last couple of seasons. And what a like just first off, what a great guy mentality of like he's just like, all right, guys, like you know how everyone's like, oh, when you're here, your family, just like the Olive Garden,
Yes.
and like there's always the illusion of uh, your team is your family. That's taking it
Mhm.
to like an actual next step forward. Of
Exactly.
like if I was playing on the Texans and C.J. Stroud is hosting dinner like almost every single night, I would try and go at least 2 to 3 times a week because I'm assuming this kid is obviously funneling it out of money from his own pocket.
Mhm.
But it's just like, what a great thing to do.
Oh yeah. Next on our docket is you pick for you Vikings. Let's ride. They're not
Vikings,
winless anymore.
yes, Vikings country, let's ride. Shout out to the Vikings and Broncos for getting their first wins. That's pretty much it.
Yeah,
Which,
yeah. Like it wasn't a pretty game. Kirk Cousins threw a cartoonish 99-yard interception return.
yes,
Um, uh, they other than Justin Jefferson, no one really showed up to play for this game. But my God, they won it.
they
They
won.
got two defensive scores,
Yeah,
or two defensive scores in this game.
excuse me. Yeah, no,
Truly a clown car of a game.
it really is. And then there's
Um,
also Broncos pulling out a huge turnaround against the Bears.
Oh, I mean, that's in our lowlights. There were no winners there.
No,
Just
it was
varying degrees of sadness.
it was who lost more. That's that game.
Yes, and naturally, it was the Bears. I mean,
Yeah,
for me, it truly is just astonishing how bad the Broncos. Like the Broncos' defense looked kind of good last year, but
yeah,
they have just fallen off a cliff. I mean, for me, so much of it is like so much of I'm not a fan of all of these teams who are like, if we just teams who haven't made the playoffs in forever, just being like, if we just had the quarterback, we would figure it out.
yeah,
Because I'm like, I talk about how many bad quarterbacks have won a Super Bowl. Like Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl, Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. I like Eli Manning figured it out twice. That
yeah,
man was that man's career was a disaster. And like arguably even more so, think about all the shitty quarterbacks who have gotten to go to the playoffs in their lives. Even just recent memory.
yeah.
Mitchell Trubisky, Tyrod got the Bills. Well, I mean, Tyrod was all right. But again, he wasn't like a superstar. Blake Bortles had a reasonable path to a Super Bowl. If you can't be good enough to get Blake Bortles at least one playoff win, are you really that good of a football team? A man
Oh
so
man.
inept at the sport of football that it was a running joke on a popular sitcom that the dumbest loser in heaven would love the Jaguars.
Yeah, no, that's such a first off hilarious bit in the Good Place. So, uh,
Yes. I don't even watch that show, and I know every little thing about that specific bit.
it's a good show. I highly recommend it. Um,
I'll get around to it.
but no, the best bit is by far when like they at one point he finds out that the Jacksonville got rid of Blake Bortles, and he's just like, no. It's like it's like who they replace him with, and it's just like some guy named Nick Foles, and he just like gets real sad and he goes, Nick Foles, and they start to think about consoling him, and then he just goes, we have a Super Bowl winning quarterback, let's go. And
I
oh
mean,
man,
again, Nick Foles won a Super Bowl.
that tickled me good.
You find a point on it.
Um,
A grossly underrated moment of last season was when Nick Foles was in clearly horrific pain after getting hit in the chest, and Kayvon Thibodeau is doing snow angels next to his corpse.
yeah, no,
Truly, there's a lot of underrated moments from last season that need to be discussed. Um,
but
next, oh,
before
yes.
we get to the next one, let's take a second and acknowledge a team here that's not on this list. The Buffalo Bills.
All right, all right. It doesn't count as a jinx because the game already happened.
The game already
Here's what I
happened?
will
Yeah.
say. Here's what I will say. For a lot of this season, I feel like I've reached the 76ers mode of like wake me when the playoffs start. But I do love a good Dolphins thrashing. Even more than the Patriots, even more than the Jets. Something about getting how much we get under the Dolphins' skin makes me particularly happy. And in terms of like a proof of concept of everything this offseason was supposed to be, this was the best example of that in terms of the problem last season was as like basically it was literally all on Josh. He had to be the deciding factor on every single play. Our running backs couldn't run unless Josh Allen was averaging 70 yards per game. You know,
Yeah.
like our receivers, other than Diggs, couldn't get separation or really get anything done. So he had to throw the ball. Our defense was like, inconsistent. So he had to step up more. Whereas like this offseason was about raising the floor, and especially when he had the UCL injury, it's like, oh, well, now we can't even do the little things right because he can't throw like short passes anymore. His entire mechanics got thrown off. Whereas when you combine him being healthy and being able to make those short passes, combine it with an infinitely improved interior offensive line, I think that's the pleasant surprise. We swapped out our two guards. O'Cyrus Torrence, the rookie, has been incredible. I truly cannot believe he fell to the second round. We were looking at him in the first round and got him effectively like 12 picks later.
Mm-hmm.
And the combination of Damian Harris and Latavius Murray, who inexplicably still has some juice in the tank.
Yeah.
Like, our running numbers were not particularly great from that game, but they were the kind of yards where it's like, well, it just makes everything simpler. because when we get into the red zone, there's options beyond Josh Allen throws an incredible pass or Josh Allen pinballs off of like 17 people and gets in. And all my misgivings I still have misgivings about the defense, but for me, like, again, it was another proof of concept of like, we have spent a lot of picks on the offense or the defensive front, a lot of picks that could have gone to like get involved in this generational like boom of offensive talent, much to my chagrin and frustration. But this game was the proof of concept about like, oh, when all of these guys are playing in harmony and playing together, it pays off like a slot machine.
Yeah.
Like Ed Oliver is the rare top 10 pick who like does pretty good and then gets his second contract who goes, wait a minute, what if I play better after getting my second contract? He's gone on another level. I'd argue he's like creeping into the all-pro discussion. Gregory Rousseau continues to be a freak of nature. Matt Milano continues to be an all-pro. And this like Terrell Bernard guy, who we just kind of randomly drafted in the third round, is just a sneaky little goblin who just always around the ball.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, my big takeaway from that Bills game is it's like, this is what we wanted to see after that Chiefs and Patriots playoff game, where it's like they have an answer for everything, and like everything seems simple. There's never a moment where they seem particularly like panicked, where it feels like we have to force things. The only downside is Tre'Davious White did get hurt, and it's just kind of a spirit breaker because he was like the first draft pick of this era of Buffalo Bills football. Incredible guy, really, really funny. He does an impression. I don't know if you remember that time cornerback for the Bills, Vontae Davis, just quit at halftime of the first game.
Yes.
He does an impression of that guy that is fucking hilarious, where he's like, and he just goes, "Nah, I'm out, coach. It's a young man's game now." And Tre'Davious was like, "Why the fuck did you go through OTAs?
Yeah.
Why didn't you just wait till..." Just kills me every time. Like, he's a great member of the community, and it really sucks because he finally had just recovered from an ACL injury. And that puts a lot of strain on the back half of our defense. But again, if like our front line is this fast and this intense, it should counter. And as for the Dolphins, I don't even think they played that bad. Like, they were fine.
On a statistic level and a player level, they didn't do bad. They got outplayed, and it's kind of interesting to see this. Like, everyone's talking like Dolphins hype from last week, where they're almost breaking records and thrashing Broncos country. Let's ride.
I will say, I do think when Josh Allen calls his own shot and runs in a touchdown when they're already up by 25. It really did feel like they were going for at least 60, but then when White got hurt, I think they were like, you know what, let's not screw around.
Yeah, they toned it back, yeah. No, it's one of those, like, yeah, the Dolphins, like, people are talking up the Dolphins for, like I said, 50-point win. And then it's like, here's a legitimate competitor of a team.
Right. And again, it's like, I think the biggest lesson from this is, like, you don't get to see history as much as you think. Like, you never want to overreact to 1 week over another, no matter how dramatic the results are. Because this offense is still very impressive. Like, honestly, watching them, you're like, oh, I can see why people are stressed out about this.
Yeah.
They have Tyreek Hill at tight end. They basically, like, really locked into this arena football style of, like, what if we get the fastest guys and have them running full speed when the play already starts?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Tyreek Hill
hits like
an average... like, hits at least, like, 20 to 25 miles per hour while running, like, for the end zone. That's insane.
Right.
He would almost not be allowed in a school zone.
Jesus Christ. That's a great measurement. Yeah, and, like, I still have misgivings. I do think, like, you know, we get on these hot streaks, and then, like, it feels like there's, like, I want to see what happens when adversity happens again. I want to, like, do we have a system of accountability? Like, you know, that's, for me, been such a problem during this era of, like, you know, it's easy to talk culture when you're winning.
Yeah.
But when things get in the dumps, it's like, well, okay, whose fault is this actually? But I digress. That's enough Bills talk for one day.
Yeah.
I'm very annoyed we have to waste a home game on London.
Yeah. I can understand that. All right, so
I know you don't want to give the Jags 2 home games in London, but it's like, well, they can't sell out the they can't sell out their stadium,
Yeah. Also, just shout out to the Jags for basically getting sent to London for a week and like a half.
right?
Um,
I just I just feel like you'd get well, no,
I feel
being in
like
other countries is fun, but
yeah, I feel like playing games in other countries, great idea, but to have the same team there two back to back weeks, I feel like isn't fair. It's a long time away, but from like their homes, but also it's just
hmm,
like it's like they're not going to be suffering from jet lag or anything like that anymore by the time team number 2
right,
shows
right.
up. They'll be on a lot better of a schedule, and also it just doesn't allow other teams to showcase as much to foreign audiences. Now I'm not saying it has to be like the top teams
Right.
playing every single time.
I mean, the punchline for a while is we were not sending them our best. Like
Yeah.
them sending the Bills feels like an escalation.
Yeah, no, it's literally like I feel like you got to like you want to keep the big money teams at home, like so they don't have to do any like not do anything crazy, but it's like you keep the money in like at the home stadiums, and then you send those middle of the pack teams like hot wild card contenders to like London to play the games,
Mhm.
or like and it could be like a divisional matchup or like something like that has meaning to the fans watching from now abroad of like their home teams playing in London, where it's like Falcons versus Jaguars is a little bit weird of a competition, but it's like what about like a nice like Rams Seahawks game or
I mean,
like Lions Packers from this last like Thursday night game where it's like that could have been a very interesting dynamic, and it has enough to attract other fans too.
right. There's been rumblings of like sort of hot takey rumblings about the idea that um, they really want to consider making a division in Europe.
Yeah,
And I think the best sign of that would be if the Bills going over is the more common. It's not the exception.
yeah, no, it's not like one and done teams.
Mhm.
It's like all right, we'll send. It's like hear us out. We'll do like Bills Dolphins and then like Cowboys Chiefs in London. That's how you know things are gonna be like games are gonna be like they're gonna be starting up a division is when they have big meaningful games like that playing across the pond, as you will. Also, though,
Correct.
there is like an American Football League in Europe, and their team names are phenomenal. It's
Oh yeah.
it's like kind of got like XFL vibes, where it's just like you're not really like you're not like oh it's a cardinal, it's a bird, and sure there's like a whole prestigeness and stuff. Same with the Cheese Packers, but it's like you got the Sea Dragons, you got the Battle Hawks, you got pretty kick-ass sounding names.
Oh yeah. Do you want to cover while we're in the neighborhood? Do you want to cover the birds, or
Nope.
are you saving that for
Honestly,
the lowlights?
I if I'm gonna save it for anything, it's gonna be for notes. Um,
Hmm.
Basically, like I said, Washington Commanders have kind of been balling out kind of hard this season, especially with their first two games, and nothing from outside of Jake Elliott with field goals win games. Nothing from that game done by the Eagles I would consider a highlight or a low light.
Fair.
It's
I
on
just yeah.
like this
I
is
just can't stand that taunting call.
yeah. It's
I just people bet too much money on these games for you to like you need as few rules that could be considered arbitrary as possible, and that is the most arbitrary nonsense.
yeah, no, it's one of those things where it's like I can if a taunt is going too far or too long, I can respect a fine. and stuff, but it's like, come on, man. Like, it's these guys are getting paid like bogos of dollars, and you got like so like they're clearly the best, like some of the best of what they do, or they wouldn't be playing in the NFL.
Hmm.
Um, so like let them celebrate and taunt a little hard. Like they're playing a game. That shit
Right.
happens.
This is a children's game for babies. Like, I can't stand it's so annoying. And it's so, like, arbitrarily decided. Um, and unfortunately, kind of a counter to our darling Houston. Our other darling, the Packers, unfortunately got beat and kind of affirmed that for now the Lions are the face of the NFC North.
Yeah, it wasn't. I wouldn't call it a bad game in any sort of way. Like, like if you like Carter will notice this looking at our notes sheet for this week. You don't see the Packers being mentioned in the lows.
Hmm.
They just didn't do good. Not so
Yeah,
bad as other teams to be in the lows, but the Lions outplayed them clearly. That's it.
yeah, it really is just like, look, I'm not down on the Packers because they're a super young team that like has no, has a whole lot of upside. Whereas the Lions are a team built for now, and they demonstrated that they are a team for now.
Yes. I think
And it's more just the sort of image of losing in Lambeau in prime time against a
yes.
team who you've consistently owned that is the problem.
Yeah.
But like, all right, the Packers are rebuilding.
Yeah. And I think it's clearly like the Packers are rebuilding. They're nowhere close to their prime with their current set of guys. Like that's pretty clear. You got Jordan Love, Luke Musgrave kind of like getting their first like real like NFL reps in like this season. Slash Luke Musgrave's a rookie, so obviously this is his first real NFL reps. Um, and it's like you got a lot of young talent, you got a lot of new talent. So losing
Mhm.
to the more established team of your division, who's not completely blown it. I'm looking at you, Vikings. Um,
The Vikings knew what this season was going to be, and they're just accepting it.
yeah, I think I think if anything, this is just a good showing for the Lions, and they're getting their like October like play not play, I guess playoff push for them like established where they're going to play their games and try and establish how credible of a threat they're going to be come the last full month of the season, and really like paint them. They're jockeying for a solid position in the playoffs. They they're definitely at the rate they're going solid wild card contender teams minimum, but it's that
Mhm.
division lead which they might have locked sooner than rather than later, depending how the rest of their games go, and just a good solid just matchups. Get people some
Right.
reps, try out some new strategies. They don't like they play the Panthers and the Bears. The Panthers, the Bears twice, and Broncos all before Christmas. And then Christmas Eve they play the Vikings, and then 2 weeks later they play the Vikings again. Like,
God, some of these. I love the alternative to that is the Bills play the Dolphins week 4 and then week 17, pointedly in Buffalo in September and Miami in December, because there was so much whinging about how hot it was in Miami that last year.
yes.
It's like, okay, no one gets home field advantage now.
Yeah. Snow during the game in Buffalo, hot during the
It
game
was
in Miami.
dangerously hot during the other game.
Yeah, let's swap that around. But yeah, no, I feel like they
Um,
have a solid like the Lions have a solid enough schedule for the next couple of weeks that they can try things out.
Hmm.
Like get in, get some points in pretty quickly, beat some defenses, and then just try out new. Like, what if we swap this player in? What if we just give Goff like a rest for a week?
Hmm.
Things like that.
Um, oh yeah. In terms of our don't sleep on games, I picked the 49ers Cardinals. Now I know that seems like a weird one because it was a classic Cardinals game for this season. You
Yeah.
know, showing up, being scrappy, putting in a good fight for about a half until they kind of get run over in the back half. I want to bring it up because Christian McCaffrey, 20 carries,
Oh,
106 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 passing touchdown. I One of my hotter takes of this year is that Christian McCaffrey is going to break the touchdown record.
I can
Like,
believe it at the rate he's going.
right? And like I feel and of course that's when he gets injured because I jinx him. But like I think
Man,
I didn't realize that like being around this many skill position players would actually be the hugest boon for him. Because the two problems he had in
Carolina.
Carolina was that he wasn't doing a good job absorbing contact. Like Marshall Falk apparently talked to him and was like, "No, no, no, you don't build up muscle. You take yoga classes. You learn how to stretch better. You learn how to adapt your body that way."
Yeah.
And on top of that, I talked a lot about usage rate with Derrick Henry, and I was like, he's gonna fall off a cliff. Like at some point, like the hits are gonna pack up. Like Christian McCaffrey wasn't just getting almost 300 carries during his peak Carolina time. He was also getting 100. He set a record with 116 catches for a running back.
Yeah.
Literally the hit total for a running back and a wide receiver, basically peak contact numbers. Whereas here, they're doing such a better job managing his workload, where it's like 20 carries a game max, and then like 4 catches max. Like they're just doing such a better job managing him that like the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
He's not that old. Like if there's one benefit to having 3 years where he just really wasn't on the field, it's like the prime is now for him,
Yeah. No.
and people will continue to have Brock Purdy take credit.
He's like he's a super quality player. Nobody can deny that.
Hmm.
And this is kind of how this is one of those your depth matters situation, and it's not for the sake of if somebody gets injured and then you're screwed in that position. 49ers quarterbacks, for example.
Hmm.
You got Christian McCaffrey carried the Panthers pretty clearly, in my opinion,
Hmm.
and he was the workhorse. Like you said, he's getting the most runs, the most catches, and subsequently the most hits because the Panthers weren't a winning team. And now he's on the 49ers, and that team, as much as I hate to, actually I don't really hate to admit it, it's a clear fact that they are stacked to the nines in depth. They got quality receivers, quality tight ends, quality defense, where it's just like, oh, you're getting a little tired. Let's swap you out real quick. It's kind of like the Eagles' defensive line, where there's a good amount of depth. So somebody starts getting tired, we can just improve
Hmm.
upon that. And they have the ability to just take care of McCaffrey. So he can make all these insane yards. And if he starts getting winded or starts feeling a little like not in trouble, but it's like, all right, I need to like give me a drive or two to just catch my breath and stuff. They still have
Right.
weapons on the offense where they can just be like, you know what, take your break, kid. We'll throw it to Ayuk. We'll give it to Kittle. We'll do other things.
It's the idea of positionless football brought to its extreme, where like literally every player can effectively be on a pitch count.
Yeah, and I agreed. Like I wrote this as an honorable mention. The Sunday night football game of Chiefs and Jets could have been a contender if it wasn't the Sunday night football game. Like in my
Hmm.
opinion, the Sunday night game and the Monday night games, or if there's only one Monday night game, the one Monday night game shouldn't be considered for sleeper picks because they're getting that prime time spot. And it's
Right.
I'm not trying to talk down on like the Thursday night games, but I feel like they're a contender because a it's on Amazon/Twitch, which watching a football game with the Twitch chat is hilarious. Um, but it's like it's it's also like clearly it's more of a work night than Mondays, if that makes sense. Because Monday Night Football's been a thing for I don't know 5, 6 centuries at this point. Um,
Right. There's established brands that Thursday night
yeah,
really doesn't have.
yeah. There's and if you're chosen to play Monday night or Sunday night football, like that's a big game. That's not a like I know they try and add diversity and stuff, and
Mhm.
switch things around. Like this, when they were making this schedule of like when these games are played, this was gonna be Patrick Mahomes versus Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, that didn't happen, but like that's the kind of hype they can build up towards these kinds of games. So that's why it's like,
Right.
and then out of all the rest of the games, it's like, all right, although the next closest games were Broncos and Bears, and it's just like, and technically Eagles and Commanders, but also I once again refuse to acknowledge that being a as a quality game, um, or a bad game. But it's like Broncos and Bears. That like, sure Broncos finally got a win, but that wasn't a good game. That was preventing a doo doo fest on ice.
Yeah, and also that, I don't know. I don't even know if I'd call that Jets Chiefs game a good game because it was just like, just seeing everyone applaud Zach Wilson for the bare minimum, truly like rudimentary starting quarterback stuff.
Yeah,
On top of like, I don't know what the heck was up with Patrick Mahomes. Like,
he
look, at the end of the day, he's still the guy, but like,
he
man,
was
it just
off of his
looked
game.
like, yeah, he just kept throwing ducks. Like, he didn't seem to trust anything he was seeing. I really couldn't pinpoint, like, it was just hard to watch at times where it's
Yeah,
like, it's kind of like what I mean. It was basically the exact same thing Josh was doing against the Jets, except Josh, I don't know, like when he does something stupid, it's more spectacular, for
yeah,
lack of a better word, because he's large and bumbling.
yeah. Now he gives off
Whereas
a little bit of
Patrick, I'm just
shoulder
like, why are you
shrug
throwing
vibes.
that duck?
Yeah, no.
Like, what did you see there?
It was it's one of those things where it's like really questionable because Patrick Mahomes is clearly like a student of the game.
Mhm.
That's there's no doubt in anyone's mind about that. He's definitely knows what he's doing. So when he start making these like wild throws and stuff like that and things that people aren't sure what he's doing, it's like what is happening? And that's kind of why I liked it, but I agree Cardinals they held their own for a little bit too against the 49ers.
Yeah, it
Like
was a pleasant. I don't know. Like, they're watchable. I think that's one of the nice things. Like, other than like two or three teams, there's not that many teams that I'm just fully declaring unwatchable this season.
yeah. And speaking of unwatchable things, uh let's talk about some of the lower moments of the week.
Right, the Bengals. So I ended up watching a lot of this game just because, like, now that we do this, I want at least a bit of every game, so I have at least
Yeah.
a little information. Watching the Bengals offense live was sobering in terms of like how little they are capable of doing right now. I Someone described it as like it's very similar to what the Steelers had to do with Big Ben Roethlisberger when he was like, in his last couple of years where he just had no mobility,
Yeah.
where it's like, well, we just have to take it under center, and you basically have to throw it within 2 seconds because you can't stand in the pocket. Like,
No.
every read has to be your first read. And, oh, we can't run the ball because we can only go from shotgun, and we're giving our okay running back the ball, like, everyone's charging at his head. He doesn't have time to build up momentum.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
and
It's
then the minute T. Higgins goes out with a busted up chest, it's like, oh, now we have nothing because, we have one wide receiver now. This only worked if we had two.
yeah, no. And it's like you've got one wide receiver and one major running back and it's just like it's the other teams aren't stupid. It's clear. And a 3 to
They're so limited.
27 loss to the Tennessee Titans. If you told me
Well,
I would have put So if you told me the score and told me just we're like one is the Bengals, one is the Titans, and like if you told me that before the season started, I would have been like 27 Bengals, and I would have put money on it. Like
Yeah, it's incredible. It's also because it's affecting the defense now because they just had to play so much
yeah,
that they're just losing it. Like their defense is actually really good, but it's like if you have to be on the field 90% of the time,
it's it's the same. I feel like it's kind of getting to the point where it's the same conversation or a similar conversation that we had about like with the Jets last week of what is like defense is solid, but something's happening with the offense that just doesn't make sense.
they're just well now they're screwed because it's just painfully clear Burrow should not have been playing. They should have shut him down for the first month of the year, taken their lumps, regardless of who the backup was, so he could be healthy. But now you have to play because you've gone 1-3, and he's not going to get healthier by playing. It's
No.
very clear that it's just going to keep getting worse. So you're just stuck hoping that he can gut it out.
Yeah, and it's like if they were doing better or not even doing better, like if they just took the lumps of a couple of losses the first games, or I guess a couple of guaranteed losses the first couple of games, where
Mhm.
they threw in a backup, let Burrow heal up, let him rest from his calf injury, correct?
Yes.
Like it would have the the teams they played, it wouldn't have been pretty games, but they could have stood a chance against like the Titans, Rams, and Cardinals if they kept Burrow healthy. And then during this like next month where it's the really like grinding games where you got like
Oh, yeah.
49ers and Bills back to back weeks and Caspod's Darlings, the Texans the following week after that. That's
They have fully bungled this.
yeah. They could have like they might have not won any of those games guaranteed, but they could have definitely had a healthy Joe Burrow and or a healthier Joe Burrow,
Mhm.
and Joey Football could have been out on the field doing good, and it would have been like it would have been games. They would have still they might have not had the division depending on how everyone else does, and it's a little out there for the NFC or AFC North still, in my opinion. But
Yeah. Like, look, your hope of winning the division and keeping this, like, sort of era going got it. Like, that went up in flames the minute he, like, started hobbling on the sideline during practice.
yeah,
But you could have at least made the wild card and been dangerous. And now you just don't really have anything. Like,
no,
now you're just like, all right, hopefully he doesn't get hurt bad enough and we get a good enough draft pick to kind of make up for all this.
yeah, they don't have enough. They don't have a good enough like team now with these injuries that they can't afford to lose a lot of the
Right.
games in this really like tough spot of their schedule.
Right. They're weirdly like locked into trying to compete because it's like T.
Yeah,
Higgins' contract's up. They don't seem to want to pay him. They're gonna have to pay Jamar soon.
yeah,
Like Burrow's already been paid. They've like spent the money. Like there's not a lot more money to go around. They kind of have to win now, or parts of this are gonna be
yeah. No,
broken
it's
up.
yeah. They clearly went about it all wrong. They should have tanked the like the first month of games, like intentionally tanked them too. Don't start Burrow. Get a minimal amount of reps on your like your main guys,
Mhm.
and like make it clear that you're gonna put in an effort to try and win the game, but you know you're not gonna win. You're not playing your main guys. Let them all get some rest, and then now you're on a juggernaut tear this next couple of weeks where it's just like these big games you're gonna get washed out.
Right. I'd argue. Honestly, I think they could have gone at least 2-2 because it's like
Yeah,
okay, a backup with no okay, their backup's not great, but certainly it's better than a guy who physically cannot move.
Yes. And, like, Joe Burrow's good on his feet. It's clear. Patrick Mahomes is good on his feet. It's clear. Like, you need them to be able to run around and move for them to get to, like, make these plays they want to make. But it's just you should have tanked. Like, I feel like they could have gone. Let me see here. Let me just look at the 4 games they've had. They had Browns, Ravens, Rams, and Titans. They could have probably gone 2-2.
Right.
With playing backups and stuff, and then had a healthy guy. Now they're 1-3. They don't have a healthy Joe Burrow, and now they're either gonna run a gauntlet with Burrow, and he's gonna get obliterated, or they're gonna bench Burrow, and they're still gonna get obliterated and not be able to do super hot and probably not make playoffs if they, depending on how these next couple of games go. Because AFC is definitely a heavier competed conference, in my opinion. Like, a lot more playoff caliber or higher teams than the NFC. And if they were an NFC team, I feel like they could have gotten away with, like, they still might stand a chance based off of how these divisions are going. But, like, they could have, if they tanked the next couple of games to heal up Burrow, but they can't do that in the AFC. There's too many high caliber teams. Alrighty.
Correct. How much more do we have to talk about the Bears? Your words?
Yes.
Do you want to just keep going?
They suck. I'm right about Justin Fields.
He had his best game and they still lost.
Yes.
Life's sad.
It's he I think he was the top fantasy quarterback too, and the team is just still not good. It's not, like, I can still keep my stance on Justin Fields is overhyped, but it's like they have problems on both sides of the ball, and it's clear.
It's a bummer. The Browns took a huge jump. This game was basically over. Look, Deshaun Watson's not very good, but when he gets scratched 2 days before the game, you're like, oh boy. Their best chance was that their vaunted defense could make it like a 3-0, like 12-9 game.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that was not the case for them. Lamar kind of cut ribbons through them. I'm very curious to see if this is just Lamar being kind of one of one, or if, the defense has gotten exposed a little. Like, a great defense can only do so much until, until the lack of an offense comes to hurt them.
Yeah.
So we will have to see where we go from here with them.
It's one of those, like, they invested quite a few eggs into the Deshaun Watson basket. And he's out. He's scratched, like you said. So they have Dorian Thompson-Robinson,
who, bless his heart, put an effort out.
Yeah, it's clear he put an effort, but it's like you have such. I guess a good way to describe it is more of a juggernaut team when it comes to certain positions against the Ravens. And let's not also forget the fact that Nick Chubb's legs in 900 different pieces. I don't care what the reports say. It's in 900 different pieces. That's like one of your top offensive guys who's like on a similar caliber to some of the better running backs like Derrick Henry and stuff, and Christian McCaffrey, where I'm not saying he's on like the same like level overall, but it's like he can hold his own. He can be in the same conversation as those guys. And you don't have him. You don't have your quarterback, and you're just gonna get outplayed in every capacity.
Yeah, truly, like, I don't know. Again, the Schadenfreude of it, after people were trying to talk themselves into being nice about the Browns again, like so many podcasts were just trying to ease themselves into, like, rehabilitating the Browns image. Which, again, I feel terrible for the genuinely good people and the good players on that team who are stuck being branded as such, like,
Yeah,
by this guy. But still, good job. Thank you, Ravens, for not letting him off the hook.
yeah, and it's
Um,
if you look at their stats too, like similar amount of first downs, similar amount of they both went 1 for 1 on fourth downs. They both only made 4 of their third down attempts, and
mhm.
the Browns had a hint more playing time, like 10 seconds more. So it was and like similar amount of punts, similar amount of sacks. Only the only difference is 10 plays. Browns had 10 more plays than the Ravens. And it's just clear. It's like, interceptions matter because Lamar didn't throw any. Dorian threw 3. But it's just you got outplayed without your big wigs. It's a fact.
Oh yeah.
And
The
it's not
the
even like
plan is
skewed
not
in a
looking great
favor.
right now.
Yeah. Um for real though, the Kyle Pitts thing isn't funny anymore. I feel
I
like
don't want to
this
waste too much time on this,
I
but
feel like this is something that we have to do where we each just write something vague and then the other person has to prompt what what their words
yes.
were.
So, like, the whole free Kyle Pitts meme was funny for a little bit. But now that the Falcons have lost 2 straight, with Desmond Ritter arguably looking like the worst starting quarterback in the NFL, like,
Oh
for
yeah.
me, it's very. Like, I watched a lot of that Falcons Jaguars game, and it just, inept doesn't really cover it.
No.
He's not even the highest catch receiver on his. He's not even the highest tight end on his team. Jonnu Smith is outpacing him, which that's when it gets to the point. Like, it's one thing if you're not throwing to your weapons. It's one thing if you designed everything around the running game, despite using 2 top 10 picks to draft wide receivers and tight ends respectfully.
Yeah.
Like, it's another thing to not get them the ball while other people get the ball. It gets to the point where it's like, well, then you just wasted a draft pick. You're a rebuilding team that wasted a draft pick.
Oh yeah.
And again, like, if I were a Falcons fan and we at least had the chance to get Lamar Jackson on this team by, like, by matching the Ravens bid, I would be so furious right now. This team has simply too much talent to be like this. Like, it's actually sad.
They have such good like skill positions. They have great running backs. They have Kyle Pitts. But it's all being led by the wrong guy. If they put in a hint of effort, maybe done some trades that might have not gone in their favor for the draft, but gotten an extra early enough pick where they can draft Bijan and then a remotely decent QB, or maybe even trade for one, or pay for there was a solid grouping of free agent QBs this offseason,
Mm-hmm.
and they stuck with Desmond Ritter.
And I don't know. A part of it's also just annoying because head coach Arthur Smith, his dad founded FedEx. So he's a bit like, I feel like so much of this is just, and again, I hate to sound Kenny Mac about it, but it's like he's a billionaire. Why does none of this matters to him. He gets fired for not doing a good job. Whatever.
Yeah,
He'll go back to Tennessee.
You also have the fact that it's like, I still can't get over that they willingly kept Desmond Ritter. Like, the Jets didn't try and keep Zach Wilson as number 1. Rodgers got hurt. That's its own other thing.
Right. I mean, like, again, you're not rebuilding enough that you can wait. Like, the Commanders can waste a season seeing if Sam Howell's the guy, just keeping him in. Because it's like, well, we weren't going to make the playoff. Like, we didn't have enough talent to make the playoffs anyway.
Yeah.
Like, whereas
You have a lot of
Whereas,
talent.
yeah, you almost made the playoffs last year in spite of it all. Like you have you are not a rebuilding team anymore. You can't waste games being like, hey, maybe Desmond Ritter can figure it out.
Yeah. Shit
Um,
is Bill washed. Now here's the question: which Bill are you talking about here?
Belichick,
Yep,
who just
that's a.
had his worst loss against the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh yeah.
Mac Jones looked horrific.
Nope, not good in
Um,
the slightest.
he he had two straight throws where I don't think they're consecutive, but they were basically on the same drive, where he decided to roll out to his right and then throw it all the way across the field, across his body. And the second one ended up getting picked off. And like the commentators knew it was going to happen. They were so like they're like, oh my god, don't you can't do that again, man. You got lucky that first one didn't get picked off. Picked off return for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Like they benched him in the third quarter. Like there was still time in the third quarter, and they just had to bench him because it's like, what is even the point? And it's just like, I don't know. It's like their defense is good, but then they just lost two critical guys, possibly for the entire year.
Yeah.
And it's also like, I don't know, you never want to be like the old mad king, like rattling a rusty sword as the peasants kick down the gates. Like,
No, it's
how many more years of this can we see of Bill Belichick just kind of like goofing around on offense, not getting skill position players, like tinkering with the defense while like bringing in his old failed head coach friends to like handle everything else.
no, it's one of those things. Kind of like you can tell how good of friends and how much Bill Belichick and Tom Brady talked, because they both are like they both did the same thing, where like Tom Brady traded teams and then he won a Super Bowl, and he could have retired on top. Like Peyton Manning didn't. Peyton Manning ran a couple years at the Broncos, won a Super Bowl, specifically Super Bowl 50, and then he just went, "I'm done." Great game. I had a great game. Got that MVP spot. I'm retired now. Thank you. Have a good night. Tom Brady could have done something similar. Everyone was like, "Oh, it's Bill and Tom." The Patriots stacked themselves for Tom. Tom Brady goes to the Broncos, or not the Broncos, the Buccaneers, who were kind of a nothing team at that time. Brings them to a Super Bowl win, and he could have been like, "Have a nice night, everybody. I'm going out while I still can." And he could have probably saved his marriage. He could have done, like, he could have been like great. And then it's like we're watching him this last season, and it's just like, ooh, Tom needs to be put down.
Yeah,
And
it like, and what are they going to do? Like, they can't fire him. You can't let Tom Brady go and then also fire Belichick. You made your
yeah,
choice to stick with Belichick. You can't
you
admit that
can't.
might have been a mistake.
Yeah, and it's like that's the thing. You can't firing Bill Belichick. It would be its own little like under the table death sentence for the Patriots. I'm not saying he's like he's definitely a quality coach. His wins have shown it over the years. But it's like, and I'm not saying he's like NFL's golden boy for coaching anymore, because I think that's Andy Reid now. I think they've
Oh,
shift
absolutely.
I think they've shifted to Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid from Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. But it's like Belichick could have retired on top. He might not have had the win like the like if he retired when after Tom's last Super Bowl with them, he would have like maybe not had the longest tenure as a head coach, but he would have definitely retired on top. Like if you're having a head coach, like best head coach of all time, Mount Rushmore conversation, you would be like Bill and Check's there, and you can technically still have him now, but he's
I will say,
he's
like,
overstaying the welcome in the league with this.
well, because he wants to break the record for most wins, but there's no path forward for him to do that with this team.
No, he
Like, he would have to change teams, and even then, it's like, well, how much longer do you want to do this, dude?
yeah no I don't, and I don't think he would be getting a lot of offers from teams unless if they're looking for like an Aaron Rodgers situation, where it's just like let's just bring in somebody old and good, because it's like
Right?
he
And
doesn't
it
he doesn't also have a lot of talent.
Yeah, I just feel bad for him. I don't know. I kind of warmed up to him during during the 100th, the NFL's 100-year anniversary thing where they were doing all these roundtables, and you're like, man, this guy really loves the game. He's just a big nerd who likes to fiddle around and figure out all these cool strategies. But that's a lot more fun when you're winning.
Yeah. No, he doesn't have his chess pieces anymore. He's starting to play checkers in a game of chess. And he's just they've done too good to collect good draft picks and decent talent the previous couple years, but they haven't done good enough for like the higher guys up to be like, you know what, I'll take him. I want to head to the Patriots. They're a good team. I'm gonna go there. Like, no, that category is gonna go to like the 49ers, the Bills, the Dolphins, where it's just like, you know what, I'll head there. I don't have a problem with this.
Yes. Daniel Jones, what a mook. It's just that game, another game that was a disaster. I really recommend watching the bits from the Manning cat. Like, Peyton Manning cannot hide his contempt for bad quarterback play. And when Daniel Jones throws a telegraphed pass right to Seahawks star rookie cornerback Witherspoon, who proceeds to run it 99 yards for a touchdown, he looks despondent. And it is just like, again, the numbers bear out that Daniel Jones has only succeeded when Saquon Barkley has succeeded. Like, it was lining up perfectly, where all you had to do was franchise Daniel Jones. And, like, I don't like the franchise tag. It's wage, suppression. It's horrifically anti-worker. But at the same time, this would have been a practical use for it, where it's like, all right, if the season was going this way, you could just be like, well, at least we didn't long-term commit to this guy. At least we're not spending a ridiculous amount of money for this guy. And now you are stuck on top of the fact that the actual offensive star of your team, who is only hurt right now because he had to ball out so he could beat the Cardinals. You burned that bridge. You might not be able to repair that bridge. And it's like, you could not have bungled this situation worse. And the team just looks undisciplined. It looks chaotic. Just at least with I think Bears fans were cautiously optimistic because they still had the worst record in the league last year.
Yeah.
Giants fans probably are the most down from this offseason to the current point in the year energy.
This team has been nuking a dead horse week after week for their fan base. And it's just like, you think we're going to be good? We're not going to score any points our first game of the season. It's like, hey, see those Cardinals? We're going to beat them. They have scored a total of, give me 1 second to do some quick math, 46 points this entire season so far. The Dolphins scored more than that in one game. Significantly more than that.
Yeah, it's even the Bears have scored more points than them. Denver scored more points than them.
Yeah.
It is cartoonish how poorly this has gone. And again, I don't know how you fix it because you're stuck with Daniel Jones for at least thing. I do think we need to have a discussion about nature versus nurture with quarterbacks, because it's yes, he deserves better. The offensive line is bad. They don't have enough skill position players.
Correct.
But he's still bad. Even by the standards of his talent, he is looking bad.
Yeah, no, and it's the worst part is huge payday.
Yeah. There's no way out.
They didn't want to lose him, so huge payday, and they are just so it sucks because they just committed to spending good portion of their time with him.
It is why I don't want to hear another word about running back value versus quarterback value, because even though Daniel Jones had one pretty good year in his entire career so far, oh, positional value. There's so few quarterback. You got to get the quarterback. You got to like reasonable voices got drowned out in favor of this.
Yeah. No, it's clearly a wash at this point, and it's it's good for me as an Eagles fan because they're in the same division. But honestly, I feel bad for Brian. I feel bad for Dable.
Yeah, because it's like, I don't know. This team looks really undisciplined and like unorganized, but it's like at the same time, like there's only so he's the one I actually
Yeah.
feel bad for between him and Daniel Jones.
Oh, I feel way worse for him than I don't feel bad for Daniel Jones. Like, it sucks that you don't have a good offensive line, like especially as a quarterback. But it's like, dude, you just got hit with a boat full of money, and this is what you're putting up. At least Joe Burrow has this injury that's been lasting and not able to get healed.
Right, right.
Like, he has that running for him. Daniel Jones doesn't have that.
Yeah, no. Like, again, we talked about franchises that just feel like they're in a ditch, and I'm putting the Giants alongside a lot of like the Raiders and the Bears
Yeah,
because like the paths to improvement are few and far between. Unfortunately,
they're
their only saving grace is their coaching's better.
yeah.
Um,
Pittsburgh might be cursed now.
yeah, so I don't really want to bother. Like we already talked, like situation they needed like, and now Kenny Pickett is hurt, and that's the worst case scenario because you needed. That's like, look, this season's not going the way you hoped it would, but like you needed to figure out if he was the guy because you are going into a draft with like 3 to 4 franchise level quarterbacks, and you need to know if you need to jump off the Kenny Pickett train. But I would argue that might curse the franchise because so much of the discourse around Kenny Pickett was like, "Oh, he went to Pittsburgh. They shared the same locker room. He's coming home. We got one of ours here, baby." And you giving up on that in 2 years just feels like you're jinxing the franchise. I know you don't follow basketball as much, but are you familiar with Mikal Bridges by any chance?
Not in the slightest.
Okay, so he was like a Philly kid. Like he grew up in Philly. His mom actually worked for the Phillies or the Sixers, pardon.
Oh, that's
And he got drafted by the Sixers, and it was like this feel good story of the draft. Only by the end of the night for them to trade his rights to the Phoenix Suns so they could draft Zaire Smith instead. And not only was it a bummer because Mikal has turned out to be a really good all-star level player who's exactly what the Sixers needed the whole time, but did you know Zaire Smith had a sesame seed allergy?
no.
He didn't. The Sixers didn't. He ended up getting rushed to the hospital with a hole in his throat, lost like 30 pounds, and is now effectively not a basketball player. And I am fully convinced every bad thing that has happened to the Sixers in this late process, the reason why we haven't been able to get over the hump is because this whole time, like, because we screwed around and like offended a hometown kid,
Yeah.
and now we're just stuck. Like, there's no way to make up that curse. And I'm like, that's where I feel Pittsburgh is now.
Pittsburgh's like, if you look at their like a bunch of their players on paper, solid team.
Mhm.
But first off, they got pooped on by our little sweet baby childs, and
Our sweet summer children.
yeah, and it's like, yeah, you pulled out a win against the Raiders, but they're not proving themselves. Pulling out a win against the Browns was their only like significant contribution to this season so far. But everything else they've done is just like they got blown out by. Oh wow, they technically did worse against the Texans than the 49ers. They lost to the 49ers
Zoinks.
30-7. They lost to the Texans 30-6.
That's actually hilarious.
Like, what are these things that are happening right now?
I just, there was kind of a reason why no other team wanted to draft that. Like, there was rumblings that people weren't happy with that quarterback draft class, and it's almost like, and literally, I don't think another quarterback got drafted till the third round. It's almost like everybody else was onto something.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
They just didn't get it done enough.
Yep, poor Najee Harris. I like to think he could still be good, but he can't be good here where the offensive line isn't great, and he gets hit by three people before he can even get into a full speed.
Yeah.
And yeah, just I like I,
It's
I like to think they could get a better offensive coordinator than this, but maybe they just don't want to. Like that's the problem with it. It's one of the problems with institutional stability where you kind of accept okay for too long and then you just kind of get stuck in okay.
yeah.
Because it's like, yeah, they could still probably make the playoffs, all things considered. They could probably go 9-7. They'll still, they've had a streak of winning non-losing records, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but don't you want more than that from life?
No, it's the job stability team. Like how at the beginning of the episode we're talking about this month is the don't lose your job month.
Mhm.
And then next month is gonna be like the keep your job month, basically. The Pittsburgh Steelers is the epitome of just keeping their job. They're not getting. No one's getting promoted. No one's getting fired because they don't do too bad or too good. They're all there to collect their paychecks consistently. That's it.
And I just think you should want more from life.
Oh, you absolutely should want more from life. Just they don't. All
Damn.
right. Let's
Um,
talk about some
Notes?
big just other happenings outside of games. Um,
Yes.
I guess this kind of goes. These two go hand in hand despite being listed on opposite sides of the notes. So the Bills versus the New York Giants is guaranteed. It has passed the threshold for not being for being flexed out of Sunday Night Football.
I
So
I mean, here's the thing.
this is
Like everyone's
October 15th. That's when
yes.
the game
Well,
is.
one, they just really like the Bills in prime time. The Bills
Yes.
tend to show up for prime time, and it's usually like the Jets game is an outlier for Josh Allen's primetime career.
Yeah, no. I'm not I have nothing it's nothing for the against the Bills for this one. It's specifically. It is my concept kind of with the don't I talked about it a little bit with the don't sleep on games where you want to have you got primetime TV. You want to get the viewers, you want to keep the viewers. The Giants haven't balled remotely hard this season. So it's like
They are a New York market.
you it's like the New York like the state of New York is going to keep the game playing, and technically the state of New Jersey too. But if you don't have a close game, why anyone out of that area is going to keep the game on is something I don't understand.
Yeah, it's like I think a lot of like the schedulers find a path of like I know they've changed the rules to give more flex options,
Yeah.
but I do think there's a certain level of path of least resistance where it's like, look, we already scheduled it. Let's just get through it. And on top of that, it's like there's still the narrative of Brian Dable. The first time Dable has played his, the team that like kind of made him a household name, as it were. Like he's the guy who quote unquote figured out Josh Allen.
Yeah.
And I do think that if there was a game coming up that the Bills could lose, or I don't know, I could see us losing the first quarter and then rallying, but I think he's going to throw out everything he has. It's going to be like 12 different trick plays. Isaiah Hodgins is going to get a touchdown. It's going to be a very frustrating game.
It probably will be, but my biggest issue with this is you got if it was the end of last season Giants versus the current Bills, even last season Bills, I would be like, all right, I respect that. People keep the game on, but it is current day. It is current day Giants who, like we've said, have not even scored as much in all four games as the Dolphins have scored in one.
Right.
So it's like that's and that's going to lead us into the question of the week. Thoughts on flex games? what is your stance?
On one hand, I get why they don't do it. They don't do it more because, like, a lot of NFL players are like subservient to their routines, their like rhythms, and their preparations to ring. Even if it's just changing it from like 1 to 4
Yeah,
or like to a primetime game, that fundamentally changes
that
so much of
shifts a
your
day.
approach.
Yeah.
Right. And like I imagine that's really frustrating for players. So I can understand like why they don't do it.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it's like from a fan perspective, obviously it just feels like a no-brainer. Like there's nothing worse than putting too much stock into a team going into the season only to find out they're a lemon too late.
Yeah.
Like those Thursday night games last year were dire because so many of them were like the
Brutal.
freaking Broncos.
Yeah. I think I think flexing. I like the concept of it, but you gotta first off you gotta have a certain like a decent timeline before that. Like
Mhm.
I would say at minimum 3 weeks of of a flex period. I
Right.
think it's currently minimum of 2 weeks as of right now, but I think 3 weeks is enough time to get your bearings straight on how to handle it. And I don't think you should be flexed like I don't think you should be flexed in or out of Thursday night or Monday night. And I know that
Yeah.
we were given a lot of terrible games from Thursday night football that definitely should have been flexed out. But I
That
find,
becomes a safety problem in
yeah,
terms of like injury turnaround or like health turnaround.
yeah. But I think that the Sunday night football game should be the most hype game of the week. And those 4 o'clock spots with like where they only do like 3 or 4 games shouldn't be like it doesn't have to be the best game of the week, and it doesn't have to, but it should be like some like solid matchups, like whether it be fan favorites, whether it be just like division rivals, whether it be just kind of like a like these two teams are doing surprisingly well this season. Let's just see how this goes.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I am curious to see because they haven't really taken advantage of the new rules yet.
No,
It'll be curious what situation is considered so egregious that they have no choice.
I think I found it. Um, Sunday night football for November 12th. Jets versus the Raiders.
Yuck. Yuck, yuck.
And the following week, Vikings versus Broncos. So, at the rate things are going, there might be some flexes later this season.
Good Lord, we'll see. Um, Other interesting notes: the entire AFC South is 2, playing completely on brand.
Yeah, which it's kind of like it's kind of interesting because everyone's been everyone's been kind of decent, and like like we talked about a couple times, AFC South and NFC South are your doo doo divisions. Shouldn't have too many winners like in it. Like the NFC South was fighting to the last week of who would get that final slot for the playoffs because they
Right,
were
right.
all basically tied. So there's no clear like winner of the division. But this is I feel like the AFC South is very interesting with theirs because it's very it's very close, and each I think the Colts and the Texans have shown some stuff, and the Jaguars and Titans have shown a decline, but it's still anyone's game.
Yes. I'm actually weirdly excited, particularly because it's like it's kind of wild that they have 3 of the most exciting young quarterbacks for a division that previously had Deshaun Watson kind of just putzing around on a bad
Yeah.
team, Ryan Tannehill being mid, and the Colts just
A
putzing
revolving
around
door of
because they were like,
quarterbacks.
yeah, or they're like, we'll try another veteran, Matt Ryan. So it's kind of a nice change of fortune for the division, honestly.
I think out of like as a division as the division as a whole, I think they might be the most exciting one at the moment. Because, like, sure, you have the NFC East where they're all almost three of the four teams have been playing real good and
Mhm.
showing off their skills. And you have same with like the NFC West. You have the younger upstarts of the NFC North beating out some like long franchises, and you got like a couple of divisions with just juggernaut teams in the AFC. But I feel like how close this is, I can see at least two. Like, obviously the divisional winner is going to make it into the playoffs, but I feel like at the rate they're going, we might have a wild card from that division.
Which would actually be kind of wild.
Yeah, that would be a
Hey,
fun wild card.
um, the Toy Story game.
Yes.
So for people who didn't watch, basically on Disney Plus they had a unique stream of the Falcons Jaguars London game
Yes.
where they put little mocap chips in everyone's pads and had them portray like little plastic figures in Toy Story world.
Yes.
So like Andy's room, they were all running around. There were Toy Story characters on the sidelines. Slinky was the first down marker, which was the one bit
Hilarious.
I really liked. Right. Now
Great.
I'm like, okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah. I, it's such a funny concept. It's like when they had Patrick Star commentate. Like, I get they're trying to
Yes.
get a younger audience too, and
Mhm.
they're going about it in pretty silly fashion, and I'm kind of here for it. Like,
Yes. It really, this and the Swift thing very much feel like the NFL realized they're going to tap their traditional markets and need to find a new market that hasn't
yeah,
been conquered yet. And it was a little clunky. I do like how much they had to from the actual feed because the mocap malfunctioned.
yeah.
But like for the second time Disney's done this, they previously did it with a hockey game, but themed around Big City Green.
Oh, that's
I
interesting.
thought it was charming. Weird. I appreciate. I love that. Like for a large chunk of it, the commentators kind of gave up on the Toy Story theme and kind of just were giving normal commentary,
Yeah.
and then they would remember, like, oh right, Emperor
This.
Zurg's here.
Yeah. No. I'm excited to just get very drunk and rewatch this on Disney Plus. I
Yes, it is on Disney Plus currently. If you all want
yes.
to check it out.
I'm very excited. I'm very excited to do that because it just seems like it. It's just silly enough that it's gonna be a fun time, and it's like with
Oh yes.
these attempts to capture like younger markets. I'm not saying they're done the best possible way,
Hmm.
but they're done in such a silly way. Like Patrick Starr basically getting a head coach fired on Christmas. Fantastic. What a silly set of circumstances to happen. And just
Truly one of the most iconic moments of the 21st century.
yeah. And I just love it. I just love this crap. All right.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk
Heading
about
off next
yeah,
week.
let's talk about next week. So, first week of bye weeks this
Oh yeah,
week.
I always forget when they start.
Yep. It's
On the bye, we currently have Cleveland, Seattle, the Chargers, and Tampa Bay. Um, for Cleveland and Chargers, it comes at a good time because both Watson and Herbert were hurt during their games.
yes.
Um,
It's
and the plucky upstarts in Tampa could certainly use the break.
it's it's a nice I think that it came for good time for all these teams.
Hmm.
I think like I'm not saying like Seattle's not like in like a super bad spot right now, and I'm not like, but it's just like they're 3-1. Like, let's just take a second, collect our breaths, get our head back on straight, and do good. And then for like for the also 3-1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think it's a good chance to just catch your breath and not not get on too much of a roll where they start developing a huge ego.
Right, right.
And like you said, it's a healing moment for Cleveland and Chargers.
the don't sleep on game. You listed Atlanta at Houston.
Yep, Atlanta versus Houston, our sweet baby boys. Um, I feel like first off, both teams are 2-2. Atlanta's coming off from a pretty big loss in England. Houston's coming off of a pretty big win. In, like, but I feel like this is going to be a nice, like a very interesting game
Mhm.
because they've got two like kind of dueling atmospheres of being in a similar boat and but very different boats.
Hmm.
Like Houston's got some like a couple of decent skill players where Atlanta has a lot, but Houston's got someone proving to be a competent QB and Atlanta doesn't. And then on
Mm.
and it's going to be interesting to see. So it's like Houston's more of a clearly a passing team. Atlanta's clearly a running team, and both defenses aren't like they're both pretty good. I wouldn't say they're amazing, but I'm not saying they're bad. So it's going to be
Right.
interesting to see how each handles kind of both defensively handles what it's clear the other team's strong suit is, but also if they decide to mix it up and change things up with their offense.
Yeah, I think this could be a fun game. It is like you're right. It's polar opposite offenses going against each other. It will be fun to see what tricks Houston pulls out to slow down the Falcons' running game. But I could see Houston winning this pretty emphatically.
I can, yeah. It's, I mean, honestly, there's not a lot of games that, in my opinion, this week that are like Jacksonville versus the Bills could be good. But
Mhm.
Jacksonville hasn't really proven themselves this year so too much. So who knows? Bears and Commanders. If
Mm,
if the Commanders were doing worse, like if they had the Giants record this year, I would say that'd be kind of a fun like look at this game that's gonna be crap.
let's slop them up. My sleeper game is Bengals Cardinals because I think the Bengals could very realistically lose this game, and then they have to really have start to have some difficult conversations.
If
Like
yeah
basically everything we were just talking about magnified.
yeah because it's the Cardinals and they're we're a team of killers. I want a killer atmosphere, and it's just like, dude, it's the Cardinals. They're clearly
Joe Burrow's going to have to drive a bus. I can't imagine he can put his foot down on a gas pedal right now.
yeah.
Wait, which calf was it? Yeah, I think it was the right one.
I think
Yeah, I
so.
can't imagine.
I
A new segment. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I will say though, once again, going with my thoughts of prime time game, like Monday night and Sunday night football can't be considered for don't sleep on games because they're the game of the week, games of the week. Um,
Mm-hmm.
49ers and Cowboys, if they got like a 1 o'clock spot, that would have been my pick because
Mm.
that's two juggernauts, but they're clearly getting represented properly. All right,
Um,
the
a new
waste.
segment for this week, the
Yeah,
Waste of Space game.
yeah,
Um, you have Miami versus the New York Football Giants.
yeah. the The Giants have been folding so much that they are just losing hand after hand, and Miami balls out on teams that can't hold their own. And honestly, if they wanted an attempt to break the record again, this is their
Mhm.
chance.
Yeah, they. I do think they are going to take out a lot of straight on this
Yeah,
game.
yeah. Danny Penny's has had a terrible season so far, and after a pretty big loss from the Bills, I think this is their chance to really just show like the Dolphins are gonna go in there angry and just laugh at the Giants.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be fun if it gets to that level, Schadenfreude.
Yeah.
Mine is New Orleans versus the Patriots. Two teams who are just fundamentally unfun to watch lately. Like the Saints, I think Alvin Kamara might have set a record for least amount of yards on 13 catches. I'm starting to think PPR is dumb now. Like Carr doesn't look healthy. They just kind of, I don't know, they're just not entertaining to watch. And we've already talked about
from the game.
Oh God, he did.
Not this upcoming one. I think last week that he got pulled mid-game.
Or yeah, I think.
Sorry, with the Packers, he got pulled mid-game.
I think they're in a place with the Bengals where it's like we've spent too much money on this team not to try to win with our hurt guys, so we have to try.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah, I really can't stomach watching this one.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be. I don't think it's gonna be good, and it's just. It's one of those times where it's just like, if you go back a couple of years, this would have been Drew Brees and the Saints versus Tom Brady and the Patriots, and that would have been
a dream matchup.
Two of the best going at it, and now it's just like, ooh, yikes.
Now it is a true stinker of a game.
Yep. Alright. Any other notes for this week, Carter?
I think we emphatically covered this week.
Alrighty. Send us home.
Thank you all for listening yet again to Carter and Kevin Explain Football. We are getting into my favorite time of year, the October, the Vembers, or the Embers as they call them. I hope you're all having a wonderful fall to start, and we can't wait to talk more football.
We'll see you next week.